Hello, everybody. Before we jump into today's episode, we have two sponsors we want to say thank you to for supporting this show. The first one is Routine. You guys have heard me talk about Routine, honestly, back from the early days of the podcast, and it's still a product I use every single morning. They have a prompt for me here. I'm going to do a little impromptu on this ad read today because honestly, this is a product that I truly believe in. And so I'm just going to tell you guys exactly what I think and why. First and foremost, this is a stat that they shared, but when you sleep, you lose between a pound and a pound and a half of water. And most of that's just sweating while you sleep. I used to not know if that was actually true, to be honest. I felt like a pound to a pound and a half of water seemed like quite a bit while I slept. But the one thing I did constantly pay attention to when I started using Routine was just the fact that before using Routine, I always felt a little dehydrated in the morning. And I'm one of those people that when I get up really early usually. I work out. One of the first things I do is some form of fitness. It's just like what I do before everyone's awake. And so it's very easy for me to grab a coffee, pre-workout, an energy drink, something with caffeine in it, and just go. When I am good about using Routine, first, I basically they come in these little single serve packets. They contain half an organic lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and they have no sugar in them at all. A lot of hydration products are going to have sugar. So one of the things about Routine that I love is that there's no sugar in there. So when I am good about doing this consistently, I will take one of those single serve packets, I'll throw it in my mixer bottle, and whether I also put in a pre-workout or something with caffeine or I just drink that separately, I try to drink that first. And the days I do that, I do genuinely feel hydrated and just have a different form of clarity all morning. A lot of people have tried to make their own homemade versions of Routine, right? You see people they take a shot of the apple cider vinegar, they put a little sea salt, a little lemon in a drink. This is essentially that, but in a product that you can take with you on the go, have it ready for you first thing in the morning. I know me personally, when I'm groggy rolling out of bed, the last thing I want to do is, squeeze a lemon, cut lemons up, go get the apple cider vinegar, find my sea salt. I just rip this packet open, throw it in my water, drink it, and it's good to go. You can try yours today. If you haven't tried it yet and you've been listening to this podcast for years, just try the damn Routine. Give it a shot. You can use code ShaneWhite30 and get 30% off your first order. So you get 30% off by using code ShaneWhite30 and go to yourroutine.com. To make it even easier, I've added the link to yourroutine.com in the show notes. So just click on the show notes for this episode, click on the link to yourroutine.com, and don't forget to use code ShaneWhite30. All right, guys, today's episode is also brought to you by NeuroRoast. Again, I'm going to go a little off script here. NeuroRoast is a product that I also came across during this year of 2023. They are a coffee company that's helping you optimize your brain function and overall well-being. This is another product that, to be honest with you, when I first started working with it, I was a little on the fence. I was like, do I really want to have mushrooms in my coffee? Well, folks, I will tell you, when I use NeuroRoast, one of the things that has stood out to me the most is I'll back up. People that know me know that I have way too much caffeine, typically. One of the things this year I've done a good job of is cutting out alcohol. Not completely, but predominantly, I don't touch a lot of alcohol anymore. What I think I've actually done the other way, though, is add a lot more caffeine. So I do definitely drink too much caffeine. That's something I need to work on next year, is just trying to minimize how much of that. But NeuroRoast is something that has actually helped me because of the way they've formulated their coffee. Like, unlike regular coffee, which is, still something I consume, but NeuroRoast specifically doesn't cause jitters or crashes. Mushroom coffee provides a more balanced and sustained energy, allowing you to stay focused and productive throughout the day. So the times I do use NeuroRoast, I'll be honest, I just don't feel that jittery, like, I'm jumping out of my chair or standing here at my desk jumping around feeling. So give NeuroRoast a try. They have some really good flavors. I'll be honest too, the two guys that started NeuroRoast are just really good dudes based out of New York, and they're hustling, and hopefully they can get some people to try NeuroRoast this holiday season by listening to this podcast. So for you folks who've been on the fence, I'm telling you, it tastes delicious. They've done a fantastic job of making this coffee not only be functional, but taste fantastic. And if you want to try NeuroRoast, you can use code ShaneWhite. So it's super simple, just ShaneWhite at checkout. you'll also get 30% off. So if you go to neuroroast.com, and once again, I have added that to the show notes. So just click into the show notes while you're listening to this episode. You can click on NeuroRoast link directly. Don't forget to use code just Shane White, and you'll get 30% off your order. Hope you guys love both these products. I'm trying to not only bring you guys products that I use, but that I believe in on the podcast. I'm not taking ad reads for any brands that I don't really believe in. So anyway, hope you guys love both those products, yourroutine.com and neuroroast.com. I've added those links to the show notes. Hope you guys love it. And I got an awesome guest coming up right after this. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Shane White Show. I'm pumped today to have Steven Sashen on the show. Steven, welcome. How are you, my friend?
I could use a nap and a clone and a clone of my, and an assistant and a clone of my assistant and an assistant of my clone, and then another nap.
We were just talking before we hit record. I was saying, I always know when I have guests on here when there's multiple people that have to be involved to book it. And then you're like weeks and weeks out, that I know you're a busy guy. There's some people where I can get them on, like, oh, let's jump on tomorrow. And then there's some folks where you got to go through some
I used to be that guy. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to jump in today. You're the founder of Xero Shoes. Can you give everyone who's listening a little bit of a background into you and specifically the brand as well, just for people who don't know what I'm talking about?
Sure. So what happened for me that led to the brand is simply this. I'm 61 years old now. When I was 45, so do the math, 16 years ago, I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break, and I was getting injured pretty much like every other week for about the next 2 years. And a friend of mine who's a world champion runner, which I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time, so saying world champion runner is another way of saying my neighbor. They're everywhere. Suggested that I try to see what I would learn if I ran barefoot. Now, I'm not suggesting people run barefoot, so people can calm down about that. But I will tell you it changed my life. And the reason is because when you're running barefoot, bad form hurts, good form feels good. And so that first barefoot run, I was just really, I don't know how to describe it, entranced. I was just really fascinated with what would happen if I changed my gait in all these different ways. If I ran faster at the same pace, with the same cadence, same number of steps per minute, ran slower at the same cadence, ran with a faster cadence at the same speed, slower cadence at the same speed, landing on this part of my foot, that part of my foot. It was amazing. Now, I'm a sprinter, okay? At the end of this little barefoot run, somebody had a GPS watch. I said, how far was that? Now, I had never run more than a mile of my own volition, and I didn't enjoy anything after the first 100 meters of that. So when she said that was a little over 5K, I was like, what? Because I had no idea. I could have kept going, but I was, we all stopped. And so the gist is I learned that I had a form problem that I couldn't feel through my regular, quote, regular shoes, and I could feel when I was barefoot. And from being barefoot, my form naturally changed. My injuries went away. I became faster. For the last 15 years, I've been a Masters All-American sprinter. So in my age group, one of the 15th fastest guy in the country, 15th.
Oh, wow. Good for you. Okay.
Thanks. It's kind of fun. And I wanted that natural movement experience because it was clearly so valuable. But my wife was getting tired of me coming into the house with my dirty ass bare feet on our white carpeting. And I got tired of arguing with restaurants about whether it was legal to be in there in bare feet. It is, by the way.
I would say, Steven, I could see you being the guy that walks in and is like, I'm barefoot and I'm allowed to be barefoot.
It's worse. One day I'm walking into the office and I catch my reflection in the window, and I'm wearing kind of ratty shorts and, a t-shirt that had seen better days. My hair was especially big, and I just stopped and I went, oh, I'm that guy. Okay. But what I did is I made a pair of sandals based on this 10,000-year-old design idea, and other runners started asking for sandals for themselves. And they told two friends, and they told two friends. And one day a guy said, I got a contract to write a book on barefoot running, and if you had a website for this sandal making hobby of yours, I'd put you in the book. Well, I've been an internet marketer for a long time. I'd made hundreds of websites. So I rushed. Oh, wow. I pitched this brilliant opportunity to my wife. She tells me I'm a complete idiot and it's a waste of time, waste of money, won't work, won't make anything. And so she said, do not build a website. I said, okay, I won't. And then she went to bed and I did. and,
How
so that was,
all good businesses are started.
yeah. And so that was 14 years ago, and it just took off. I mean, and in fact, on day two, after my wife kind of growled at me, she looked at what was going on and said, all right, if this is going to be for real, you're going to need someone running the business. And she's a brilliant operations finance person. So
Oh, cool.
that's how it all began. And what we do, in short, is we're making footwear design to let you feel what you've been missing with regular shoes, which is natural comfort, improved performance, and health. And the way we do it is by just getting out of the way. It's not about footwear, it's about form. It's about using your body naturally and optimally. And it's just that some footwear gets in the way of doing that, and we get out of the way. So, for example, we make shoe. Wait, I'm going to grab a shoe.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do is make stuff with a wider foot-shaped toe box instead of, wait, I'm going to grab a normal shoe, instead of something that's pointy, which
Oh,
is
yes.
the
Yep.
shape of your foot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to say to people, when I point to their pointy toe box shoe, I go, is that the shape of your foot? They go, no. I go, what problems might you encounter if you shove a foot-shaped thing called your foot into a non-foot shaped thing called that shoe?
Right. Sure.
And then they go on for hours about the problems they're having. So anyway, so that's one thing. We make things low to the ground for balance and agility. We don't elevate your heel because that messes with your posture. It tips you forward, and then you have to adjust with your ankle, your knee, your hip, or your back, and that puts strain on those joints.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, we don't have toe spring. That's where you can't flatten your foot out at the front. And if you have a stiff sole in a shoe, they build that in because otherwise you'd be slapping the ground. The soles of our shoes are super, super flexible because you have a quarter of the bones and joints of your whole body in your feet and ankles. That's so they can bend and flex and move for balance and agility. So, of course, your foot will never roll into a ball like this, but the point is the shoe can. And we make the soles designed to accommodate one other thing. You have more nerve endings in the soles of your feet than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. That's to tell your brain what you're stepping on or in, so it can adjust your gait depending on what you're stepping on or in by first moving those bones and joints in your foot. So the soles are designed to give you traction and protection, of course, but also that ground feeling that you need for effective, efficient, and perhaps most importantly, enjoyable movement. And most running shoes, for example, they say you should replace them every 200 to 500 miles.
Yeah.
And big, thick, padded ones, even more. My God, I was at a trade show a couple weeks ago.
This is a question I had for you today.
Well, hold on, check this out. Some of the new shoes that are coming out in the next year, they're single-use shoes. They're literally designed to fall apart after one race.
Are these are for like marathons maybe or something?
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
and they're like $400 to $500.
Yeah, I ran the Chicago Marathon a couple years ago, 2 years ago in Alpha Flies, which at the time I think the pair I got was the new ones. They were 350, and they're designed for 80 miles maybe at the max.
Well, and even worse, the design of those super maximal shoes. So I'm a former All-American gymnast and B physics geek. So the first time I saw some big thing of padding, I went, padding is like a trampoline. It's tuned to a weight and speed. If you're not running at the right speed and you're not the right weight, these things are going to get in the way badly. So,
it's kind of like you're trying to fight gravity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically all foam sucks energy. So these things are designed to suck energy less if you're the right weight and speed. Basically, many people don't know this one. The Harvard indoor track has a similar design where the panels on the track are made for an 800-meter runner who runs about a 148. And who weighs about 135 pounds.
Okay.
If you are not that fast and not that light, it gets in the way because it's just like out of sync. If you are that weight and that speed, you're going to set a PR.
Okay. Interesting. So it's just like some of these shoes are just designed.
Same thing.
They're designed for like Kipchoge, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's meant for him to try to break 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah. Now, but I'm so glad you mentioned that. So after he did break the sub-2 marathon under perfect conditions, and everyone's going, it's the shoes. There was a couple of articles that came out that did not get publicized very much for reasons that will become obvious, with Kipchoge saying, it wasn't the shoes, it was my legs doing the running. Did not get a lot of attention.
Sure, Nike didn't love that.
No, they did not.
It's not good marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, last but not least, we make our shoes to have, we make the soles with a different rubber material. So we say they have a 5,000 mile sole warranty.
Yeah.
We just make them durable. We want to keep things out of landfills. We want to make them stay on your feet. And we have had people who said they wanted to invest in us saying, well, the first thing is you got to make these shoes not last so long. And we We went, and we're done with this call.
Yeah.
Click.
Well, it's so funny you say that, Stephen, because that was generally one of the main questions that I had so let me give you, thank you for giving the background on that. I'd love to, I want to give you kind of like why I wanted to have you on here too. I think everyone listening will
Yeah,
love
who
this.
are you? What are you
Well,
doing here?
no, it's so great because this is my story. So I am not a runner. I would not call myself that, but I actually have started running quite a bit. I've run 2 marathons. So like, I'm kind of like that typical, like, I do, but I do more like,
but how do you say you're not a runner and you've done 2 marathons plus?
I think it's because I like to think of myself, I do a lot more like functional fitness. So I do like a mix of CrossFit and some functional fitness. And then I run with my dog in the mornings.
Okay.
It adds up to be actually a lot more miles than I've realized this year. And then I've done some races because I think they're challenging. Genuinely, Steven, I've signed up for them before because I don't think I'm a very good runner and it's a big challenge. And I've just more than anything like challenged myself with stuff. I told you, like, I ran the race in Nike Alpha Flies, and then last year was the first year. I would say last year maybe I can say I kind of became a runner because I actually got like a running coach and I took the marathon very serious. But during that process, I think I had used like 4 different pairs of shoes. All of them were cushiony. I had I'm going to butcher this, but
Saucony, yeah.
Yeah. I had I'm gonna blank on some of the other. I've had like 3 or 4 of the main brands, all super cushiony shoes. Train in those, I've used those forever. And then transparently, the first like true barefoot style shoe I tried, you're gonna laugh at this. I've become I wouldn't say friends, but to some degree, a close acquaintance with a guy named Marcus Philly, who does some functional fitness training on the West Coast, and he promotes Vivo Barefoot. So he had like a discount code one time. I grabbed some of those last year. Loved them, but they fell apart. Like I got holes in them, I felt like, in a couple months. And so they were okay. They were overseas. I remember when I bought them, they had to like ship them over and took forever. And again, nothing against brands overseas, but like they weren't American made. I was like, I took forever to get here. They were the wrong size. It was a pain in the ass. But I love the barefoot style, at least, of those. And so I actually started running in those a lot. And I felt the same thing. Like, just for everyone listening, I'm a person that has benefited from running with more barefoot running. And I was starting to sub out the cushiony shoes for those Vivos I would say like every other run. And it became like 2 runs a week, 3 runs a week. And pretty soon I was running in those more than I was running in the cushiony ones. Fast forward, we moved. I like got rid of some shoes. I threw out the Vivo Barefoots because they actually got like holes in the heels, like legit holes through them. And I've had some friends online that have been wearing your shoes. And there are a bunch of Ohio guys that do like powerlifting. And so I actually thought you were like into powerlifting. I thought it was like a powerlifting brand or something. And you guys ran a Black Friday deal. So just to give you a little credit, like I saw one of your Black Friday deals pop up. I'm like, you know what? I've been wanting to get another pair of barefoot shoes. I didn't want to buy Vivos again. And I've been seeing all these guys wear Xero. And I'm like, I'm going to try them. So the goal of me getting on here was I bought them on Black Friday. I've been wearing them. And it's so funny because now I've shelved the cushiony Sauconys again. And I've been running in the barefoot shoes, and me and my dog run quite a bit. And I'm like, my feet feel so much better. Yeah. And I kind of forgot all that. So it's funny that, like, to kick this off, the story you gave, because I truly am like in the middle of that right now, where my feet feel so much better. I've really enjoyed wearing them. They're comfortable, and I forget they're on my feet a lot of times. And then at the end of the day, my feet don't hurt.
Yeah. Well, I want to first of all, thank you. It's wonderful to hear. Secondly, I want to highlight 2 things. We 3 things. We hear all the time from people saying, I accidentally went to bed wearing my Xero shoes because I forgot I had them on, because they are really lightweight. It is. That's the other thing. They weigh way less. The second thing is, people they find out about us in one way and they think that's who we are. I mean, if you look behind me, we have casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals for pretty much everything you can think of. Literally, fully waterproof snow boot, sandal that you can wear at the beach, and everything in between. Cool. But the biggest thing I want to highlight is what you did, which was brilliant, which was the right way to transition. Because if you've been not using your body naturally, if you will, things can get weaker, you develop muscular patterns, if you will, that are not necessarily ideal. And so it takes a little while and different amounts of time for different people, depending on various neurological things, to make that transition, to start using your body the way it was made to be used, for doing that, to adjust your gait accordingly. And what you did was, perfect. It's like you start small, you build it up. So just taking your time and listening to your body until it feels like, oh, now it's fine. I mean, we have some professional basketball players, similar thing. I'm saying to them, don't play in our shoes. wear them around the house, wear them when you go to the gym, wear them when you're warming up and doing a shoot around. And eventually, we have something you can start playing in, but you want to get used to it first. And some of it is literally just getting that little bit of feedback that reminds your brain what to do to work properly. Like, I like when people will put on our shoes, which are totally flat, and they go, I feel like I'm leaning backwards. Like, yeah, that's because when you're in a shoe with a big high heel, you have to lean backwards and stand up straight. And so now you're
Right. Yeah.
still
Yeah.
leaning backwards, but very quickly they adjust, and then they go, oh, I feel like my posture's better. It's like, yep. So it is fascinating watching, but that's a great story. I have to give you my dog version.
Yeah.
So my wife and I got a dog, our first dog ever. I
Okay.
can't say that I love my dog more than my wife. At least that's what she tells me. And she feels the same way. But I did learn with this dog, who's low to the ground and kind of long, and I called my sprinting coach after I had the dog for a week. I said, I learned something from this dog. He goes, what? I said, I can sprint full speed, no warm up at 6 a.m. because that's what the dog wants to do. And so it's super fun. At first he kind of humored me, and he would run at the same pace I was running. After about 2
Okay.
weeks, like, no, you're going to try and keep up with me, baby. And,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now
Dogs are wild.
so I do
How they like
overspeed training.
adapt.
Yeah. Well, I do
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
overspeed. He pulls me and I try and keep up with good form. It's a blast.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's cool. We do the same thing. Like my dog, it was funny too. Like I'm a lot slower than you, obviously, and maybe go a little bit further than your normal run.
Yeah.
And at first, like, a year ago, he was fine. He does good. He's in really good shape, and he eats really well, and he's healthy, and he, all that. And then, but lately, yeah, he's like, he'll stop and sniff and then run past me and keep going. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like he could just go all day. Like he would rather stay out there and just keep running, and he doesn't need to come home.
Well, I have to keep mine on a leash because I don't know what the hell he would do otherwise. But so he is pulling me along to do overspeed work. But the other thing is he's so much faster than me. What he does now, he'll like run a little ahead of me and then turn around and kind of jump at me and then turn around and start running ahead of me. He's like, don't
come on,
taunt
Dad,
me.
let's go. What kind of dog is this?
He's about 9 different things. So
Okay.
everything
Yeah.
he is not what he looks like. He looks like he could be kind of Beagle or partly Jack Russell or partly whatever, but it's like none of those. We had his DNA done, and when I show people the report, they're like, "Really? That's what he is?"
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay.
He's great.
Nice. Well, one question to back up too, Steven, because this is one, and I'm going to give a shout out to my mom. Funny enough, me and her were just having this conversation. My mom, and I'm sure there's lots of people that listen that probably have this exact same question, so that's why I want to ask you. She's had some knee issues. She actually broke her ankle a couple of years ago in like a bike riding accident. So now she wears. The other day I saw her, and she was wearing like thick Hokas, and her concept in her head was like, this is actually helping me like cushion my knees and my ankles and stuff. And my argument to her, and this was like, a week or two after getting back into your shoes, was like, I think you're actually potentially making it worse. Like, I think it's actually like it's destabilizing all of these core joints and muscles in your legs. And I was like, I think actually walking in barefoot shoes it's gonna probably bother you at first. You have to like ease into it, but I think it actually would potentially solve some of the things that you feel like you have pain with. I'd be curious your thoughts, because you would know the answer to that better than me.
This is one of those things that's going to sound counterintuitive to some people, because it is counterintuitive, but sometimes our intuition guides us in the wrong direction. So, for example, I'll take it way out of context. There's food that we love that just isn't good for us. Okay. Tastes really good, feels really good, not good for us. And we don't really notice a problem, except that, if you just ate nothing but chocolate cake, which is one of my fantasies, if you ate nothing but chocolate cake, eventually it would catch up with you. Similar thing here. There are things that can feel good that aren't necessarily good for you. So, for example, let's think about a memory foam mattress. You lie on it, it feels really good. Would you do push-ups or jumping jacks on it? No. Why? It's sucking the energy out of the system. It's unstable. It's causing problems. But why does it feel good? It feels good because when you get in just the right position, you can relax all your muscles. What happens if you just keep relaxing your muscles for longer and longer periods of time? They get weaker.
Yeah, right.
People come back from space, they can barely stand up. You sit on, people are in hospital beds, they can barely walk after a while. Research shows a similar thing with your feet. If you don't let your feet move, this is not rocket science.
Sure,
you put your arm in a cast, 8 weeks later, it doesn't come out stronger. You put your foot in something that doesn't let your foot move. Again, I'm going to use a normal shoe. I'm literally trying as hard as I can to bend this thing. And where it's bending barely is not even where your foot bends. You put your foot in something that doesn't let it move, your feet get weaker over time. But again, why does it feel good? because you're not using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons. Your things are getting relaxed. That part's kind of obvious. Here's the counterintuitive part. Cushioning doesn't cushion. So what happens is two things. I'll do the world's fastest physics lesson. It's about the difference between pressure and force. And I'm going to use a fun example. Have you ever seen the video? It was a slow motion video. I think maybe one of the first slow-mo videos ever made of this kind of big fat guy getting shot in the stomach with a cannonball.
Yeah. Yes.
If you watch it again, and it's really fun, you see that the cannonball hits him and just the fat kind of, ripples, and his whole body kind of, ripples around the cannonball. That's the pressure being dissipated. But the force is still going into his body, and it takes this 350-pound guy and, shoots him 5 feet back. So when you have cushioning in your shoes, it's the same thing. The cushioning spreads the pressure out so your feet don't feel it. The force is still going somewhere. Where? Whatever the weakest link is, your ankle, your knee, your hip, and your back, typically. And so the research, people don't like research. They don't change their mind based on research, but I'll say it. The research, and it was done by, oh gosh, I'm horrible with names now. It's really annoying. Anyway, it might come to me. It was done by someone who thought cushioning is good, more cushioning must be better, which is what we all intuitively believe. Because it seems so obvious. Almost any cushioning does not reduce impact forces.
Okay.
More cushioning does not change that. Cushioning does not cushion. What your body does when you have cushioning underneath your feet, and that can be in your shoe or it could be being on grass or sand, for example, your leg stiffens and tries to use the cushioning, but it doesn't work. And partly your leg stiffens because your feet aren't getting that feedback through the cushioning. So again, you got more nerve endings in your soles than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. How much can you feel through an inch or two of foam?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
So your brain is trying to adjust to get some information. And one of the things that it does is stiffens your leg to make a harder impact, to get some info. So put it all together, and that's fundamentally the problem. And again, people don't pay attention to the research. It's been coming out lately in the Washington Post and the New York Times, is that these maximally cushioned shoes can be maybe beneficial for a small group of elite runners who, again, run at the right speed and are the right weight, but for everyone else, they could be problematic because you're just out of sync and they're not letting you feel the ground. So you could have form problems that you will never know. They're still squeezing your toes together. There was actually one article I'm going to do a video about and comment on it, where somebody was saying one of the problems is because they are so high off the ground and they have this big toe spring thing where they keep your toes elevated, is it changes your gait in a way where your musculature might not be ready for it. It'll shove you onto your toes and require you to use your toes or your plantar flexed foot, your pointed foot, in a way that isn't normal and you're not ready for. So that's a problem. I'll use a complete variation on a theme. People are calling pickleball A, the fastest growing sport in the country, and B, the cause of more injuries. Yeah, cause of more injuries than anything else. It's not pickleball, I would contend. It's the footwear that we were wearing when you're playing pickleball. High off the ground, can't feel things. You're unstable because you're high off the ground. You get a little tippy, just like basketball players. They fall off an edge of a shoe, they get a sprained ankle. Same thing with pickleball. We have, my wife and I have friends that have known us. We met them right after we started the company. Dear friends, never wore our shoes. We never talked about it. We never asked. It never occurred to us. They never bought them. They never tried them.
Yeah, just kind of, it was something in the background you didn't talk about much.
It never occurred to me. And they emailed us recently. They've gotten really into pickleball. They moved away, sadly, gotten really into pickleball. We're getting a whole bunch of problems. I can't say words that sound like they're medical. So had a whole bunch of problems.
Okay.
And then decided to see if, new shoes would make a difference. They went to Zappos, I think, and looked up pickleball shoes, and a couple of ours were recommended. So they bought like 13 pairs of shoes, including ours, tried on all the others, didn't really like them, put on ours and went, wow, these are really comfortable. I don't know if we can play in them though. So they decided, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll bring our regular shoes just in case. And after a little while, they each independently had the same experience. They emailed us independently and said, I forgot I was even wearing them. And within a week, all those issues that I had, gone. And again, it's not because of the shoes. It's just getting out of the way of what's natural and optimal. If you're low to the ground, you have better lateral control. If you can feel the ground, you can be more responsive. If your toes aren't getting squeezed together, you can use them for balance and strength. If your heel is not elevated, you're not messing with your posture in some way as you're playing. So, that we just see that all the time. But again, the simple thing for your mom, I should have started with this. If somebody's wearing some super maximalist shoe or even just a normal shoe, and you're totally happy in it and you're not worried about getting injured, even though most runners get injured during the course of a year. And I'll say something fun about that in a sec. If you're totally happy, great. I'm not going to try and talk you out of what you're wearing. I will say that when you're done wearing those shoes for your run or whatever you're doing, you can put on one of the things we have for casual use, something to wear in the office, something to wear around the house that will help you with active recovery because they let your feet bend and flex and move better. And
Right.
B, there's research showing that just walking in our shoes builds foot strength as much as doing an exercise program for your feet. And there's research showing that making your feet stronger by doing that same exercise program reduces your risk of running injury by 250% over the course of a year.
Wow.
So
Okay. So just like getting back to natural movements. I mean,
it's getting
pretty
back to
basic.
using your body the way it's supposed to be used, the way it's been used for, since we've had bodies.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, that's wild. It's funny. So knowing you were coming on the podcast today, this morning I grabbed so it was funny. Black Friday, I grabbed a new pair of Sauconys.
Yeah.
And I grabbed your shoes. And the thought was, oh, I'm gonna for my functional fitness, I'll be wearing the Xeros. That's my new thing. And then I'll be running the Sauconys again. And then I've been running in your shoes, like I said. I told this whole story, and I put the Sauconys on today. And the analogy I like to use is, and you said it too. When I'm wearing Xero shoes, I feel like every step I'm like gripping the ground in this weird way. Until you wear them and run in them, it's like hard to cut. If you're watching the video, you can see how my fingers. It's like your toe. I was reading something the other day, like how your toes in theory they should act like your fingers.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I wear the Sauconys, I thought about it today while I was running. It's like I feel like my toes are pinched, and then I'm just like my foot's flopping.
Yeah.
Is the best analogy. Like it's just like there's no. It's like I'm basically like a dead weight, dead fish.
Yeah.
Taking step by step is what it feels like.
Here's a funny version of that. We sponsored a cycling team for a little while. We have a new one that we're sponsoring now from the Novo Nordisk cyclists, who all are people who are people who have diabetes, who are. I'm being politically incorrect. There's a new phrase for people with diabetes, not diabetics. But anyway.
Is that not okay now? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's like people don't want to be labeled as a something. They want to be a person with a something, as an example, which I get.
I get it.
I
get it. I get it.
I'm just not good at keeping things in my mind.
I'm not either.
So we had a cyclist who was clipped in, wearing their cleats and their SPD pedals. And after they finished their training ride, they got out of their cleats and put our shoes on, one of our shoes on, and just rode home, like, hanging out at the coffee shop. And by the way, there's a coffee shop in North Boulder. If you want to make $1 million, just show up on a Sunday at around 11 with a crane, just steal the bike rack. It is crazy. So
tons of people.
Yeah, there's not one bike under 10 grand on that rack. It's
wow. I get it. Yeah. Everyone's out cruising.
Right. So anyway, one of the guys was riding home wearing our shoes and not even clipped in, obviously, and looked down and goes, "I'm putting out more watts in your shoes than when I'm clipped in." And I said, "Yeah, I can tell you why. With a stiff cycling shoe, your foot is just becoming a dumb lever. When your foot can move, it A, can be strong just independently, and B, you're getting feedback that's sending neurological signals up the chain, basically up your entire leg, about letting it know what's coming. So it's just giving information so that your body is pre-potentiated, ready for all that force that you want to apply, that otherwise you can't feel anything and it's not doing it. So we're experimenting with that, let's just say.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. My dad's really into cycling, so I'll think it may to have him try that and give him a pair. So it's funny too, Steven. So, and I'll be honest, you just said it, and it was one of the questions I had today, a few minutes ago, was when I started running in your shoes, and this is why I brought in the fact that I wore Vivos last year, was like those I put a hole in. I mean, I really don't feel like I ran. I have to go back and look. I use Strava, so I can see how many miles I ran in them, but it wasn't that many. So to me, it started like ripping and kind of falling apart. So for Xeros, you have this 5,000 mile warranty. Is that, do you think truthfully on the podcast, do you think like if I use those for my running shoes next year, like they're not really going to wear out the same way? Like I'm used to having shoes wear out.
So, I have found, much to my disappointment and chagrin, that I am unable to violate the laws of physics.
Okay.
Pains me to no end. And so what I can tell you, first of all, I have a couple of warranties. We have our 5,000 mile sole warranty. We have a 24-month manufacturer's warranty because no manufacturing is perfect for anything, especially for footwear. If you, so what I can't do in terms of laws I wish I could violate are things having to do with abrasion and friction. So if you are putting a whole lot of horizontal force on the ground, think about just scraping your foot along the ground, that will cause
Sure.
abrasion. Nothing we can do about it. If you
Yeah.
start your car like Fred Flintstone, or if you're running like Fred Flintstone starting his car, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yes. Okay.
So the warranty is basically, we've had people who've put tens of thousands of miles on our shoes. We've had people who've worn some of our sandals, which are like literally 4.5 millimeters of rubber. That's it. And wear them for 8 years. We had a guy,
Really?
one of our first customer service person. So let's say he was our manager because he was the only one. So why not?
Yeah.
He was a 65-year-old guy and he ran 120 to 160 miles a week. So he
Oh, wow.
ran
Yeah.
from his house to the bus, took the bus from Denver to Boulder, ran from the bus stop to our office. That was 5 miles. Then did that on the way home, and then took his dog out for 5 to 10 miles, and then on the weekends did his long runs.
Whoa.
And this is again in our simplest little sandal, the first thing we made, 4.5 miles of rubber. And so he's doing all that mileage. And after a year, he's showed us this shoe. And it's like, it didn't look new, but it was still totally fine. So if you have
Wow.
really good form, here's the best way I can say it. One of the marks of good form is that you're landing with your foot underneath your center of mass, underneath your body as much as possible. So if you imagine standing up, just lift up your foot, put it back down to the ground. That's kind of ideal. I mean, a tiny bit in front of that, but not very much. Um, and so if you literally just lift up your foot, put it down, lift it up, put it down, lift it up, put it down, there's no horizontal force. There's no abrasive force. Things like that can last forever. And
Hmm.
so, and by the way, on this whole thing about landing with your foot underneath you, I was at an event recently. It's called the Mountain Land Running Summit. It was just a couple of days of the top researchers in the country talking about the cause and cure of running injuries. And for the first time ever, while people had different opinions about how to treat various things or, you know, best nutrition or best workouts, or whatever, they all agreed on one thing. The biggest problem, the biggest cause of injuries is overstriding, is landing with your
Hmm.
foot in front, too far in front of you. If you stand up and put one foot out in front of you where you're finding it's landing naturally, if you're an overstriding person, and I say, so what does that look like you're doing if you're, say, in a car? People will go, oh, it looks like I'm putting my foot on the brakes. It's like, yep, that's exactly what you're doing. When you land with your foot in front of you, it temporarily slows you down, and then you have to reaccelerate by pulling your foot underneath you, and that's actually
Yeah.
causes strain on your hamstring and your glute because they're not meant to be pulling towards you; they're meant to be pushing back. So, or that's where they're the strongest, more accurately. So again, can't violate the laws of physics, but we did make the product so that it would last longer. When we met our first rubber manufacturer and told them what we wanted the compound to be, the guy said, "But that's not how they make rubber for the outsoles of shoes." And I went, "Yeah, no joke. That's why we want to do it this way."
Oh, got it. Okay. That's really cool. Cause I mean, I feel like even from just talking to you and learning more about the old running shoes that I used to use, like they're designed to just be burned. It's like a whole marketing thing. They're
They
designed to
are
be burned through
literally
to be resold.
so you look at a modern running shoe, and typically there's all this foam and then a super thin layer, like 1.5, 2 millimeters of actual rubber. And
Right.
it didn't used to be that way. It used to be a thicker layer of rubber and a much thinner midsole. But they literally are designing the outsole, the rubber part, to fall apart, to wear out around the time that the midsole is compromised. Because as soon as you're stepping on foam, every time you step on it, it gets compressed. The shape changes. I was, oh my God, I was at the Denver airport and there was a guy in front of me on the little walkway
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
the inside of the midsole of his shoes had so collapsed from the way he was walking on it. His feet were like massively turned in. I mean, it's like his ankle bones were almost touching the ground because of how the midsole of the shoe had just fallen apart.
Oh,
Compressed on just on the inside part. And I took a video of this just from like the knees down, just to show people. This will tell you the difference between social media platforms. On Facebook, everyone's going, "Oh my God, those shoes are horrible. What are they doing to his body? They're going to screw up his ankles, his knees, and his hips." And on Instagram, everyone's going, "Why are you body shaming that guy?" Body shaming? I'm shoe
of
shaming
course.
the guy. I don't even
Yeah.
know who the
Yeah. If
guy
anything, get it
is.
right.
So, it's an interesting thing to look at. Like, look at the wear pattern on your shoes. Look at the wear,
Okay.
how the foam has compressed and changed, because it happens very slowly. And I was in the lab with a guy named Dr. Bill Sands. He was the former head of biomechanics for the U.S. Olympic Committee.
Oh,
And
wow.
he would just show that every shoe you put on, for most people, changes their gait in
Hmm.
ways that they don't even notice. And then over time, as the shoe compresses, as the foam compresses, et cetera, it changes it even more. But because it happens so slowly, you don't notice. And then you come in going, how come I have a, knee, hip, back, whatever injury? And no one even thinks to look at the shoe to go, oh, this shoe has now compromised my biomechanics because my ankle is no longer under my knee, which is no longer under my hip, which is no longer, it's crazy
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
But again, it happens slowly that we don't notice.
No, that makes sense. I know I was listening to someone on a podcast the other day that was saying usually, oh, you know what it was? I'm reading. Do you know who Kelly Starrett is?
Yeah, quite well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm reading his newest book. I can't remember the exact name of it, but
Mhm.
I'm listening to the audio version, and I'm on a chapter where he was talking about how if you have back pain, you can tell you almost 9 times out of 10 you didn't do something to your back. It's probably something to do with your hips or your knees or your ankles or your feet. And this is just a story for everyone on here. It's not. It could be related to the shoes I've been wearing, but I'm 32. I'm very healthy, active. I've never really had pains of any sort, to be honest, except when I've like overrun, and which is funny. And all of a sudden lately I've like had this weird middle of like almost like a spine pain, like in the middle of my back in the mornings. I'm like, that's really weird. Like, what have I done differently? I couldn't think of anything, and I realized I'll try to roll it over here, but my dog bed's in the way. When I moved into this house, I don't know if you can see this. I bought one of these chairs that are like I don't know if you can really see this. It's
Lift it
like
up.
the ones that have like a little bit more of the cushion.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're kind of like, yeah. So I thought that was something like ergonomic, good from
Yeah.
whatever. I was thinking back and I'm like, I started getting the pain when I started sitting in that all day. And I have a standing desk. It was a new chair, so I just didn't think twice to stand up. And this whole week, literally Monday through today, this is Friday afternoon. I'm like, I'm not gonna lower this desk. I'm just gonna stand for the week. And I've been wearing my Xero shoes, and I'm barefoot at my desk right now. Back pain's gone.
Yeah. So similar idea. Most chairs. The question about cushioning is the same thing about chairs. Cushioning your
I
shoes, same thing
figured,
with
yeah,
chairs.
that's what I wanted to ask you.
If you're basically relaxing things that should be tense to hold you up, then things can get out of whack. I'm going to show you the chair I'm sitting on. This is from a company called Core 360, QOR 360. So hold that thought. This is the Xero shoes of chairs.
Oh, nice.
But the
I
thing
should have
is,
gotten that.
It's super unstable-ish.
Okay.
And so you're constantly having to. So it's sitting. The whole idea that sitting is the new smoking is not true. Not moving is the new smoking. And so most chairs, you just don't move. This thing, you have to constantly be making these little adjustments, just like your feet make little adjustments to help you stand properly. Funny story about that. It's a two-part story. I'm talking to guys who make a insole that's basically a force plate. And so they put it in the shoe and they were standing up trying to calibrate the equipment, and they could never get a stable reading. It's like, what the hell? Why can't I get a stable reading? And it took them a while to realize their feet are constantly making these little micro movements for balance and agility when you're standing. That's what takes the pressure off your ankle, your hips, and your back. So it just never occurred to them. In a similar vein, I know a guy, he's the doctor for at a place where the entire community works in a warehouse. They're like doing 12-hour days in a concrete floor warehouse or factory. They're making toys for kids, wooden toys for kids. And they were having just a whole bunch of foot, ankle, hip, knee, back problems. To make a long story short, they switched to minimalist footwear. And he says, I can't tell people that the number of injuries I treat has gone down to almost zero because they just don't believe me.
Oh, weird.
So, and people say it to us all the time. I'm on my feet all day. What do I do? Actually, I just realized this. I hear this a lot. I was in a hospital 2 weeks ago for a little minor thing for my back. And 3 doctors stopped me and said, thank you for everything you're doing. We're on our feet all day, and we couldn't do that until we had your shoes.
Wow, that's so cool.
One of my oldest friends, I didn't even know this. He said, a couple of years ago, I bought your shoes. Now the entire surgical department in our hospital wears nothing but your shoes. And now we feel fine at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting, right? I do think we're in this, I don't know what I call it, health 2.0 or 3.0, where it seems like we're there's more and more people starting to peel back the bullshit that was like so much marketing over the last 3 decades.
5.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me give you my favorite story about that. Well, first of all, big shoe companies brilliantly misuse physics.
Okay.
So they do all these things like, hey, Adidas, or if you want to be pretentious and correct, call it Adidas because it's Adi
Is
Dassler.
that really how you pronounce it?
Yeah, because the company was Adi Dassler. That's who founded it.
Oh, I
So,
didn't know that.
but
Okay.
again, correct if you're in Europe, pretentious if you're at a dinner party.
Yes, correct.
Anyway, they did a demo of their new boost foam where they took like a 2-pound steel ball, they bounced it off some concrete, it barely bounces. They bounce it off the other company's foam, it bounces a few times barely. They bounce it off the boost foam, and the first bounce goes to about, I don't know, 25% of the height that they dropped it from, and then it bounces like 10 times. Well, that's cool, but you can go to the Exploratorium Museum in San Francisco, and they have an exhibit where you can drop a steel ball through a plexiglass plate with a hole in it, and the steel ball lands on or hits a steel plate with concrete underneath it. So again, in the boost foam, the ball bounced, about 25-30% from the initial height. What's your guess on what percentage of height you get back from a steel ball bouncing off a steel plate with concrete underneath it?
Oh man. Intuitively, I want to say it's not going to bounce, but I feel like with this test, it's going to bounce a lot. I don't know. Now I'm confusing myself.
Yeah, the first bounce hits the plexiglass plate,
Okay, so it comes all the way back.
about 99.5%. And
Whoa.
then it
Okay.
bounces 200 more times, or 260 more times, actually. The only thing that would be better would be like a diamond ball on a diamond plate. But you might be surprised to find that if they did that, they would lose the diamond ball and diamond plate. So this is a misuse of physics. The other thing, what shoe companies have
Whoa.
convinced you of, is things like running is just inherently painful and stressful and difficult. Well, then you go to
For sure.
countries and places where they don't have modern athletic shoes, and they don't have these problems. They're running happily until they're in their 70s or 80s or however long they live, not a problem. Well, but here's the finale to that. On the Nike website, on their Run Fearless page, towards the bottom of the page, they printed a portion of the abstract of a study that they designed and they commissioned. And the way they publicized the results of the study, and the whole study has never been published, the way they publicized their interpretation of the results of the study was they said that this new shoe they developed, so they were comparing their best-selling running shoe to a new shoe they developed, the Zoom Structure 22, their bestseller, to the React Infinity Run. They said the new shoe reduced injuries over 12 weeks by 52%. Sounds great. Then you look at the numbers. It's on their website. The Zoom Structure injured 30.3% of the people running in it in 12 weeks. The React Infinity Run, quote, only injured 14.5%. Is that the best you can do after 50 years of R&D?
Yeah, you're like, why are you? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And secondly, injury rates go up over time. They don't stay consistent after 12 weeks. So what'd you do to make it better? And this is not in the what they have on their website, but this is in the study. I've seen the study. The guy who did it showed it to me. They said they got rid of many of the protective features. They made it more like us. Well,
of course.
Then the next question should be, well, if that shoe's so much better than the other one, why are you still selling the other one? And then the next question should be, if that shoe's so much better, how many, with that new technology or that better technology, how many other shoes are you using with that technology? The answer right now, 2. Let's just say that if we injured 14 to 30% of the people wearing our shoes in 12 weeks, I'd be having this conversation from my jail cell.
You're right, though. You would be having a totally whole different outcome. And why do you think that is? Do you think companies like Nike they're so massive and people have just always, not always, but like in the last few decades, if you have Nikes on, you assume you're wearing one of the nicest, best of the best.
The shoe companies have convinced you that the shoes are fine, and if you're having a problem, it's because of you. I'm here to tell you it's the other way around.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Here's part of the proof. If these shoes are so good, why is there still a multi-billion-dollar market for things that you buy to fix your shoes?
Yeah,
different arsenal, different cushioning, different whatever. I mean, look, the shoe companies know what that stuff is. Why don't they just build it right into their shoes? And the answer is that stuff doesn't really work either. And some of it's just being misused. Orthotics, and by the way, I'll say 2 things about orthotics. Orthotics were never designed to be something you wear all the time. They were designed like if you had a problem and you needed your foot to rest while it recovered. So it's like putting you get whiplash. You don't live in a neck brace for the rest of your life. You wear it while you recover, and then you start working on strength and flexibility during that whole time. Same thing with orthotics. Now, that said, if you wear orthotics and you think I just said something really, sacrilegious, that's cool. Don't worry. The best platform for an orthotic is our shoes because they're flat. There's no built-in arch support where it gets in the way of the orthotic. We don't have a foam midsole that breaks down unevenly, which changes the geometry of the orthotic. What I saw in Bill Sand's lab, again, every different shoe people would wear would change their gait. What that suggests is you would actually need a different orthotic for every shoe that you wear, and then you need to change it every time that shoe gets compromised in some way. But that's just absurd. I mean, the
Yeah,
other
it
answer
seems
is you just get
crazy.
your feet strong enough so that they can just support you, because that's what feet are supposed to do.
So what would you say about I don't know the right terminology, but I would just say like if you're flat-footed, is that like a thing? Is that like a fake thing too?
Oh, no, it's a thing. It's just not what people think it is. So I
Okay.
had comedy level flat feet my whole life. My parents used to tease me about it. I'd get out of a pool and you see an oval with some dots in front of it. I mean, it was
Okay.
bad.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's research currently showing this, but I'm going to just share my experience and what I hear from people. By using my feet, they got stronger. And what that did is, so the longitudinal arch, the one that we think of as the arch, it got stronger. And what it did is it made my feet a little shorter. It built an arch, not a huge one,
Mm-hmm.
because that's predominantly genetic, but really a strong one. And it made my feet a little wider too. So by just going basically barefoot, or in the first sandals that I made, my feet got stronger. I developed an arch. I get out of a pool now, it looks like a footprint, not like one of those, massive giant hole in the middle section, but looks like
Yeah.
a footprint. And I've heard this story over and over and over. It's not in any way surprising to me any longer. So again, a lot of the problem is not whether your feet are flat or even high arched. The issue is, are your feet strong enough to do what they need to do? And again, how do you make something stronger? You use it. You exercise it. You put it under a little bit of load. So if you want to get your feet stronger, and you don't want to like run barefoot, for example, jump rope.
Yeah.
It's a
Jump
very
rope.
similar thing. And that's a good way of doing it. If you don't want to jump rope, just jump up and down, not on a
Mm-hmm.
trampoline, on the floor. Just, because when you do that, when you jump up and down, you're going to be landing on the ball of your foot. You're going to be engaging your arch. You're going to be engaging your ankle. It's one way to get stronger. And, like any workout, you do a little bit, you rest. When you feel better, when you're, not sore, for example, you do it again. As you get better, you add some time, you add some weight, you add some whatever kind of extra resistance you want to do.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So like the arch in your foot is kind of like when it's flat, another analogy of that could probably be like it's just a super weak muscle. It's just
Yeah.
something that like any other muscle, just like you
Yeah.
haven't built strength around it. As you build strength, instead of it necessarily getting bigger like another muscle, it could kind of get bigger, but it actually just like strengthens and bends.
Yeah, and the whole point of the longitudinal arch is that when you engage it, which happens if you land on the ball of your foot or midfoot and your toes are kind of pulled up towards your knee, that pulls that ligament, it pulls that arch, and what that does is it aligns the bones in your foot into an arch. We call it an arch for a reason. An arch is the
Yeah.
most stable structure in architecture. Same thing with your foot. It's a flexible arch, which is even better because that way it's allowing your foot to be part of the spring mechanism that is your entire lower body. So,
Got
it
it.
starts with your foot, continues with your ankle. People talk about pronation.
Mm-hmm.
Pronation, unless it's way too fast or way too much, is part of the spring mechanism in the foot and ankle. Your knees are part of a spring mechanism. Your hips are part of a spring mechanism. So, but it all starts with the feet. And if your feet aren't able to be the right spring and give the right signal to the upstream parts of your body, then the rest of those things have problems as well.
Wow. I have learned so much today, Stephen. This is so cool.
Well, that was a total accident.
No, yeah. I can tell you're passionate about this, which is I
Well,
love
I'll
talking to people
tell
who
you what
are.
it is. First of all, I've always been fascinated by movement. I've done a bunch of things. I was an all-American gymnast. I've done Zen archery. I've done Tai Chi. I taught yoga. I mean, you name it. If it's some physical thing, if I haven't done it, I can pick up the things about what makes it work pretty well. As an undergraduate at Duke, I did research on cognitive aspects of motor skill acquisition. I mean, I'm just kind of
Oh
into
wow.
it. But
Yeah.
the other thing that I'm really into, and I don't know why, and into is not the right way of saying it. I get really, really angry when I discover that in some industry, people have been lying to you in order to make money
Yeah, for
and
sure.
making and hurting you in the process. I mean,
Yeah.
I sometimes joke that it's a shame that shoes don't kill people because then we'd have a Philip Morris story on our hands. And I would argue that in the footwear world, what the big companies are doing is in many ways no different than what the tobacco companies did. They're knowingly harming you. And if that sounds crazy, remember what I said a few minutes ago. Go to the Nike website, look at the Run Fearless page. They show that after 50 years, the best they can seemingly do is injure between 14.5 and 30.3% of the people wearing their shoes in under 12 weeks. What the what?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of crazy, right? I mean that's up to a third of every 1 in 3 people
Yeah.
wearing the shoes or get injured. That's crazy.
Well, imagine I said to you, "Hey, let's go out for dinner. I'm going to take you out for dinner every night this week. You have a choice between one of two restaurants. One of them, you're going to get food poisoning on average, once a week. The other, you're going to get
Yeah,
food poisoning on average twice a week. Which one do you want to go to? Like,
exactly.
how about none
How
of
about
those?
neither of these? Yeah, right.
Well, that's not the option. Or imagine you go to a running shoe store. It's like, hey, what's your best selling running shoe? Well, this one, but just so you know, it'll injure about 30% of the people wearing it in 12 weeks. Oh, do you have one that doesn't injure 30%? Yeah, this one only injures, about 14% of the people, like 1 out of 7 in 12 weeks. Don't you have anything that's not going to injure me? It's like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
you see it said running shoe store?
Yeah. Right. It's so wild.
It's not
So
okay.
for you, Stephen, I mean, you've been doing this a while, and one of the things we didn't really have a lot of time to get into because this was so interesting, honestly, of what we have talked about is where the business is going. So you've obviously been doing it for a while. You said your wife got involved early on to help you with operations and finance. So if you were to give everyone listening today from the business side of things with Xero Shoes, like where do you feel like you are on the spectrum? Like, are you guys at this point, like you guys were on Shark Tank, obviously, like you've had
Yeah.
some very like public displays of what this business can be. Um, you're obviously not in your infancy. You're well beyond that now, but you also like, I would love to know for you guys, like for you, is this seems like such a passion. I could totally see this. Like you would love to keep this as an independent company forever. Or do you, where do you kind of see this on the spectrum of from a business perspective? Like, what are you guys trying to build? Where are you trying to go?
Yeah, I have to remind myself that we're not a startup, but in my mind, we're always a startup.
That's
So,
good.
because there's always something new to do. We got some things. So we've been growing like 30 to 40% year over year for many, many years. You can find our financials. We file them publicly,
Oh, do you really?
xeroshoes.com/SEC. Yeah, we did an equity crowdfunding raise in 2017 and raised a little over $1 million. And so we have to file our financials publicly twice a year.
Oh, cool.
And
Where do you file it at? Sorry, I think I cut you off when you said it.
xeroshoes.com/SEC.
Oh,
So
okay.
that'll
Yeah.
redirect you to the quote Edgar website where you can find all our financials. When people say, you can't keep growing 30 to 40% year over year, I say, I know it should be much faster. And they think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Or we do have an investor. We have a private equity company that has a minority position in our company. And there's an advisor to that company who has a long history in footwear who invested directly in parallel with them also.
Hmm.
And when we were courting each other, he said, do you see this becoming $1 billion brand in 10 years? I went, oh God, no, 7. And it sounds a little glib, and it is, but I can paint that picture. I can tell you I can tell you that if these things happen, and these are things in the works, then that could happen. The best thing I can say is we're just here to try and change the world. And I know that sounds even more hyperbolic, but my wife says there's enough shoe companies on the planet. We don't need any more shoe companies unless your shoes are changing people's lives. And we hear people saying that all day, every day. And you change enough lives and you change the world. So there are things that are going on over the next 12 months that have literally just started happening in the last 2 days. They're starting to, make themselves real. That will change everything for us, and just start that ball rolling even faster. What I can tell you is, if you look in Google Trends, Trends, trends.google.com,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
search for, and you look in barefoot shoes, it'll show you how many people have been searching for barefoot shoes. And you look from 2004 to the present, and you look both in the US only and worldwide. And you'll see that after the big boom in 2009, 2010, everything kind of settled down for a while, but it's been growing organically for the last few years. And we hit an all-time peak in interest,
Oh,
both in the US and worldwide. And that's been growing consistently. I had to remind myself that a lot of that happened because of all the stuff that we've been doing for the last 14 years. I
I'm
forgot that we
sure.
were partly responsible, but nonetheless, and independent of that, the interest is growing significantly. And what really sells this story is not the data, and it's not people saying, whatever their experience is. It's people's own experience. And so the more we can get people to just have the experience, and discover what it's like. Discover how it feels, feel what you've been missing. Natural comfort, performance, and health. That's what makes it move. The biggest thing that has grown our business is word of mouth,
Okay.
and people get into what we're doing and they don't want to wear other things. So they buy a pair of sandals, and the next thing you know, they have 6 pairs of our shoes too, for various
I could see
reasons.
that I could see that easily happening.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. It really is pretty crazy. So we're just trying to do everything we can to give more and more people, more and more different kinds of people, the experience of natural movement, and let it go from there. And we're just finding ways to do that. And some of the stuff that's happening now are ways where some of it will be just literally people being able to have the experience. Some of that's getting into more retail. Some of that's some other relationships we have. Some of that is just hearing from people who are more famous and highly respected. So there's just lots of different ways that we're trying to make that happen. And we've been growing really, really quickly internationally. We started
Oh,
Zero
great.
Shoes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. We started zeroshoes.eu about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And in 2 years, it got to be the size of our regular company, like after 8 years. I mean, just it's
Oh, wow.
going really fast. We just launched zeroshoes.co.uk, and that's still getting rolling. In fact, if people go there, you'll see the new design of our new website. We're rolling that back to .com and .eu.
Nice.
I guess there's a lot going on where we just see things really, really starting to accelerate. And the gist is this: if you think about the analogy I like to use is the original Audi TT, their little
Hmm.
two-seater roadster. The original design, it looked like kind of a VW Bug on acid. It was just some people really liked it. Some people thought it looked really weird. It was very polarizing. Got a lot of attention because it was very polarizing. Over time, people got used to seeing it. It was like, okay, whatever. And then they were more, they'd see it more and more often, and then they'd kind of, I got to check it out.
Yeah.
And and at that same time, Audi was toning down the wackiness of it until it got prettier and prettier. And at a certain point, that car, really took off for them. I think we're going to see the same thing. More and more people are wearing our shoes. Our shoes are very recognizable. People get stopped all the time by other people going, "Hey, what are those?"
I have the
Or
bright
"Hey,
blue. The
yeah,
bright blue Prio Neos is the ones I
oh
bought.
yeah, yeah, it's a good one." And so when we have, and it's not just us, when the whole category has enough awareness that even the doubters are going to go, "Yeah, let's give it a shot."
Yeah.
That's when things are going to go exponential. Because again, the experience is so profound. It's not going to get everyone. It's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be so many more people getting hip to the idea, having that experience, wanting to have it all the time. And to answer your question about, keeping it independent or whatever, our only concern is doing the right thing for the brand, is
Love it.
doing things so we don't lose the DNA that got us where we are. We've seen it happen with other companies where either they get acquired and then that company says, "Oh, let's just put in a bunch of padding. Let's, add some arch support. Let's add," and all it just goes to crap. Or the company itself is, for whatever reason, has the idea that if they add cushioning, if they add arch support, if they add heel lift, they'll make more money, which they need for some reason. We will never do that. We're always going to give you a range actually between as barefoot as you want to go and the protection that you need for some activity you're doing, like hiking or snowboarding or whatever. But still allow that natural movement. Still allow your feet, your toes to spread, your foot to move, your brain to get feedback from the ground. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I have no idea. So we have had people approach us and say, like I mentioned, someone who said, "Hey, you just need
Yeah.
to make the shoes not last long." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we've had that often. If somebody comes into our business and they say they want to invest, and the first thing they do is tell us what we should be doing differently, that's the end of the conversation. So,
Makes total sense.
and at the same time, we need to have more resources. We've
Right.
been growing. People say you keep growing 30 to 40%. That's huge. And I say, it should be faster, because if we had more money to buy more inventory, to expand the product line, there's so many things we could do that would have made everything grow faster. We just haven't had those resources, or we didn't take those resources because they came with enough, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Problems, that it just was going to be a bad idea. So I have no idea is the best thing I can say.
No, I love that answer. And Steven, it's funny, like talking to you today, you do such a good job of butchering this word, embodying the meaning and the reason why you started Xero Shoes. It's like, how can you take what you just shared on this podcast? I'm sure doing podcasts like this helped to some degree, and share that across the board, right? And for you guys, I mean, I'm just speaking because this is my circle. Like, again, I have like a home gym that I use that I built in my garage, but I like to say I'm like the world's shittiest CrossFitter. That community, and that, like, I worked at RX Bar back before RX Bar was acquired. And so, like, that's kind of where I learned about CrossFit. And a lot of the things you talk about, it's like functional fitness, CrossFit, all those different things are kind of all the same thing in my mind. But I don't know. It's funny, like getting Xero in the hands of the Marcus Philly was a guy I mentioned. Like, I have to introduce you guys because I'm sure he would love your shoes too. He wears the Vivos just because I'm sure they're helping him.
That'd be great.
But love to get an American-made company in his
Well,
hands.
let's be clear about what American-made means. Everyone's manufacturing in Asia because it literally is the only place to do it. When people say, well, you should be making stuff in America, it's like, I would love to, but it's literally not possible to make products like these. Oh, yeah, literally not possible. The factories aren't here. The equipment's not here. The materials aren't here. The people who know how to do it aren't here. Not at scale and not for all the kind of stuff we're doing.
I didn't know that.
Literally not possible to make things domestically. In the same way, it's literally not possible for us to be having this conversation on domestically made devices.
Yes, correct.
And people love to argue with me about that. I go, the industry experts, the people who know more about this than I do, say it would be $100 billion in 20 years until that could possibly happen. So the best thing I can say is the whole idea of where to manufacture. It's not as simple as humans like to think that it is.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, we imagine that if we can imagine it, it must be as simple to make that happen for real. It's not the case, unfortunately.
Got it. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
To interject though, but the good news is the factories that we do use, we are proud of them. They treat the environment and their people really, really well. They're giving people jobs that are in high demand because they're good jobs that pay well and treat people well. And we're proud to be with them. People like to say, well, move to this country. It's like, well, if you move to that country, the materials are still coming from another country and the conditions are not as good because, they don't have the same motivation to do that. So it's simply just not as simple as we would all like it to be.
Yeah. No, that makes tons of sense. I know that's a whole deep world that I probably don't know enough about that, I'm sure gets oversimplified.
Like many things, human beings like to make things simple.
Yeah. Right. Well, I could totally see this, Stephen. I mean, I hope I'm one person who can be a loudspeaker for what you guys are doing. I could see these getting into the hands of a lot of, like I said, functional fitness folks. Seems like an obvious one. Like, it just seems so obvious to me. You see some of the shoes they wear, and a lot of it's brand deals and sponsorships, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, my goal in a year is to have a whole bunch of those very famous people who are wearing other stuff take their old footwear and their old contracts and all throw them into a wood chipper.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I think you got something. I mean, I love the product itself. One of the things when we started recording, I told you I would try to wrap this up in an hour so that you have time before your next one. So what I'm going to do is move to, we have a couple of questions that I love to ask to finish up the call, Stephen, and I'm pumped because I genuinely think you're gonna have some good answers here. The first one is around goal setting and just getting stuff done. So, Stephen, as you're running a major company, right? You're already laughing, so this is gonna be a good answer.
Yeah.
When you think about setting, whether it's big multi-year goals, annual goals, all the way down to just like, what is Stephen doing today? What tools do you put around you? So are you like a pen and paper kind of guy? Do you use apps? What does Stephen use to get shit done?
Unfortunately, my brain.
Okay.
I literally haven't found anything that works the way my brain works as quickly as I need it to work in a way that I would then be able to reference it in a way that's useful. And I'm not proud of this, to be honest. I mean, my joke is I do it that way because I'm old enough that they hadn't invented Ritalin when I was a kid. So, invariably people who start working here, especially if they're involved in anything that I do after a little while of being here, will say, how do you do this? I mean, you were doing my job too before I got here. It's like, yep. So, I haven't found any of those tools that actually work the way I need. In fact, there was I think an article in Wired magazine about all those productivity tools and how they really don't work for people.
I'm with you. I use something. I talk about this way too much for how much I don't. I get no money from these people. I use something called a full focus planner, and I have ADD. Got diagnosed with ADD, the whole 9 yards, and it's I'll send you a link to it. It's
Cool.
something that just like makes you just like dumb things down and pick what's important to do today. Because otherwise, I'm like all the fuck over the
Well,
place.
but
I'm
you know,
like,
here's the other thing. On any given day, there's like 10 things that happen that I didn't plan that are necessary to
yes,
attend to.
yes,
Or, or something that we've been working on that falls apart. Or, I mean,
mm-hmm.
there's so many things that change every day that, yeah, it's again, it's not as simple as we would like.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you even use like pen and paper? Like, do you like jot
Oh
things
yeah,
down, or do you?
I do, and I've got a whiteboard, and I put things on the whiteboard, and eventually I erase it if I haven't looked at what it was for 2 years.
Yeah.
I have a stack of papers, and if I haven't looked at that in 2 years, I just throw the whole thing away.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so the pen and paper, the problem is that I have like 3 notebooks, and I have to remember which one I wrote in. I got to figure out how to do something about that.
Yeah. You know what's funny though, Steven? I would tell you, and I've said this recently on this podcast a few times, that response that you just had, I would tell you 95% of the founders, and I've had almost 300 of them on here by this point, say the same thing.
That's
So
right.
I'm actually starting to develop a belief that if you're going to be an entrepreneur and a founder, there is something to be said about being a little disorganized. Like there's just something about just like you tackle and go and go
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go.
Here's a variation on that for the fun of it. Years ago, a very well-known internet marketer called me to say, "Hey, we have an opportunity to spend, I don't know how much it was, some large amount of money to go hang out with Richard Branson on his island." And I said, "Oh,
Okay.
well, why would I want to do that?" And he's like, "What?" I said, "Why would I want to do that?" He goes, "Well, imagine what you could learn from Richard Branson." I said, "Oh, I already know." "Oh, really? What?" I said, "I would learn that I'm not Richard Branson." And here's the kicker: neither is he. If he had to recreate everything that happened to him in the last 30 years, he couldn't do it. The world has changed. He has changed. So
Oh, that's
I
funny.
can't I
Yeah.
can't model myself over someone who's dyslexic and British and really good looking. And I mean, put all these things together. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. You just gotta figure out your version.
I like that. I like that answer a lot. That's true. We're all different and we all have our own way.
Yeah.
The next one, Steven, is around source of knowledge. So again, I'm assuming you're going to have something that's going to be good. Is there something that I always like to keep this really open-ended? It could be a book, a podcast, an article, just something that as soon as I said that popped into your brain that the listeners today could go and learn from.
Two of my favorite books that can change your life if you really let them. One is Fooled by Randomness from Nassim Taleb, the guy who also wrote The Black Swan. Most people haven't
Oh,
read
love
it.
that
They think
guy.
they know what he's talking about. They're wrong. Fooled by Randomness, the subtitle is something like The Hidden Role of Chance in Markets and Life. And part of what it does, if you really take it to heart, is it gets you out of the idea that you're as integral a part of whatever happens to you as you think you are. So much of what happens, I say 90% of what we've accomplished is luck, and the other 10% is also luck. And then there's a separate 100% where 90% is working your ass off every day, and the other 10% is hopefully being smart enough to know how to put out the fire that started overnight, even though nothing changed since yesterday. So Fooled by
Love
Randomness
that.
is one. The other is Stumbling on Happiness from Daniel
Hmm.
Gilbert. And the reason that book is so interesting, I can give you the Reader's Digest version, and he's got a TED Talk about it. That's a slightly longer version of the Reader's Digest version. The Reader's Digest version is human minds, our number one goal is to try to predict what will make us happy in the future. The problem is we're really bad at it. The other problem is we're even worse at remembering how bad we are at it. And the other problem is even if we remembered all that, we'd still think we're special. Yeah, a million other people got what I thought I needed to be happy, and they're no happier than they were to begin with. But if I got it, I'm special. I know all those lottery winners are no happier a year later than they were before they won the lottery, but if I won the lottery. And so, what it does, again, if you take it to heart, is you become less enamored with the idea that if you get to a certain thing, then you will be happy. And once you get over that idea, it's not that you get over it. It's that when that idea pops into your brain, you just don't pay as much attention to it. It's like, if the thought, I'm a tall black woman came into my mind, I would give it no attention. So when the thought,
Okay.
I'll be
Yeah.
happy if, we sell the company for $1 billion comes into my mind, I give it no attention because it's just not the way things work. And that just frees you up to be a little more attentive to what's going on and dealing with what's happening now without getting too wrapped up in it. Now, to be clear, my biggest source of stress, there's two. My biggest source of stress is that I'm very aware of where we are now, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
very aware of where this company could be. And the gap is stressful. I mean, that's the math of it. If you imagine the difference between where you are and where you want to be, that's a
Yeah.
cause of stress. But the only difference is I don't imagine I'll be happier then. I just imagine that that's what, that's the culmination of this. That's something that would be a good thing. That's something that would be whatever. The other thing that stresses me out is on the way to and from work, there's always people driving 10 miles under the speed limit in front of me. That just kills me.
See, that's because you live in Boulder. Here in Chicago, you're getting run over at 10 over the speed limit. So it's a different problem
Yeah.
here. I love that. No, I love that. There's something really to be true about that. I mean, there's something about being present too. I know for me, I have almost a 1-year-old son. And this last year, that's been a real reality check for me of just, life's going by fast and then you
Yeah.
have a kid
Yeah.
and you're like, holy shit, like every day is a difference. And it's definitely made me in my business, the podcast, being a dad and a husband. It's like, it's a little bit of a reality check
Yeah.
of just like be a little more present every day because it's all flying by real fast.
It is very true. I had a bit of a health scare at the beginning of the year, and it really snapped me out of a number of habits that I've had. I've had a habit of postponing enjoyment since I was a kid.
Okay.
Like the marshmallow test that they give kids. Do you know about this?
This is where you eat the marshmallows?
Kind of. They have a kid sitting in a room, and they put a marshmallow in front of them and say, "You can have the marshmallow if you want, but if you can wait for 15 minutes, I can give you 2 marshmallows." And most
Yes.
kids cannot wait. They will, they'll just be like freaking out while they're waiting, and they'll eventually eat the marshmallow. They did find that the kids who have the better ability to, postpone that enjoyment tend to be more successful later in life. I never took the test as a kid, but I can promise you I would have been one of those kids just waiting for the other marshmallow. I don't care.
Oh, okay.
So I used to I would eat chocolate cake by eating the cakey part first and saving the icing for last. So after my little life and death health thing, I have been very deliberately learning how to not postpone enjoyment like that.
That's a good way. That's a good note for this podcast for sure.
And here's one of the simple ways. If there's something I want to have for dinner and it's like
Mhm.
$10 more than I'm feeling comfortable paying, I spend the $10.
That's a good one. Yeah, I to have a similar quick story. I've always been one person that's tried to, I wouldn't say I've always been like a big saver necessarily, but I've definitely been a finance guy as my background. I've always been just more of like planning for retirement, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like as a kid and in college, that was always kind of like in the back of my head, like that's what you're supposed to do. And I had a buddy right out of college. We worked at the same company, and we were both, I think we were 20, 23, 24. And like he was one of those guys that was just really good about putting a lot of money into investments right away when we started making a salary, tons of it saved. He always said like he had the shittiest car, and he was like, yeah, but someday I'm going to have this, really like all the stuff. He was really good at it. Like he was really good about like delaying gratification. And unfortunately, just overnight, diagnosed with a brain tumor, and we actually like lost him 9 months later.
So,
And I bring this up as a story because I just think there's a balance. There's a balance there. Like,
there definitely
right?
is. But given that, there's a book that everyone should read called Die with Xero.
I've wanted to read that. It's on my list. I've not read it. I should read that.
And what I can tell you, the experience of reading it, and this has been borne out by other people who I've recommended it to, is it starts out and you're like, yeah, I get it. But the more you decide to keep reading it, and it does get a little redundant, and it's not the best written book, but by the end, it will change the way you think about your time, your life, and your money. And then even better than changing the way you think about it, it should change the way you behave about it. And not overnight, it's a process. But this saving for whenever is not a good idea. I mean, you don't want to be, you don't want to be an idiot. But
yeah. Right. There's a balance.
And it's like there's things you can do in your 30s and 40s you can't do in your 60s and 70s. So if you don't do them in your 30s and 40s, that opportunity is gone.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yep. I'm 32, and me and my wife tried really hard to have that balance, because it's like you also got to kind of enjoy the ride. I don't want to be. I'd rather enjoy the ride my whole life than hope I get to enjoy the ride at the end.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. This was honestly I'm not saying this to blow smoke. This was one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done. I feel like I learned a lot, and it was really cool to meet you. for everyone listening, last question, just where can people learn more about Xero Shoes? Where can people follow you? And how can people ultimately get involved with the brand?
It's really simple. Xero Shoes, Xero Shoes.com. Although amazingly, if you type in Zero Shoes.com, you'll still probably get to us. And in fact, you will. And then on social media at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes, wherever you happen to at or slash. And then if you're in the EU, xeroshoes.eu. In the UK, xeroshoes.co.uk. You'll get redirected to all those. But that's where you can get the ball rolling and see what it's like to live life feet first.
Love it. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I'm going to be putting mine on tonight as I leave the house because I seriously am obsessed. I love them.
Good,
So thanks again for the time, man. I really
man.
appreciate it. It was nice to meet you.